then here we are. Okay, welcome everyone. I cannot see chat, that's not good. Welcome everyone to this Rewards and Progression Developer Q&A. I hope everyone is doing well. Today we will be talking to the developers with as the topic the last CDP that we had about rewards and progression, of course. For those who don't know what CDP stands for, it means Collaborative Development Program. And during a CDP, players can give feedback on certain topics on the official Neverwinter forum to give guidance to the developers on what the players want regarding said topic. If you haven't followed the last topic, there were a lot of ideas. And I made an overview of all the player ideas regarding rewards and progression, and you can get a link to that overview by typing the command !CDP. So like this. If you don't know what this all is about, you can check there, but don't let that distract you too much. Before I let that Manu in the bottom left, the moderator for today, take over, I have 4 generic announcements for the stream. The first
apparently one is, they don't have sound.
They don't? What? They do have sound.
They do have sound. There's somebody
Nice.
I don't feel so alone anymore. I feel like this happens to other people.
So the first announcement, for obvious reasons, I will not be interrupting the stream every time someone follows or subscribes. I will be calling out those events probably at the end of the stream, and if I get to it, I will type something in chat, but I don't know if I have time for that or I have any attention for that. Then something that I need to say about the people in the panel. I know people will be asking why is this person in the panel, blah blah blah. It was my intention to collect a diverse group of people from in or around the Central European time zone. I tried my best to do this, and to be open, some of my best friends in the game are not in this panel, and those who are not in, this does not mean that we don't appreciate you or something like that. Don't be rude if you don't agree with someone in the panel. Focus on the questions, not on the people. Then number 3, I'm not on channel? Okay. Number 3, that Manu was so kind as to provide us with a chatbot. This chatbot will pick up questions from chat and place them in a channel on my Discord. You can find this Discord by typing an !Discord. Like that. I can actually show that channel already. Why not? Permissions. No, we'll do that in a second. I'm doing this. We will be using those questions in order, unless there are duplicates, of course, or totally off-topic questions. We will skip them, but we will be using them in the order that we get them. That Manu will talk about the specifics in a moment. One more thing, questions that are not going via this bot will not be handled. So that's very important to remember. And fourth, I will also like to thank the people behind the scenes who are helping to make this stream happen. Skull Elf, I don't know if you're on stream, but I guess you are. He will help that Manu with the questions in Discord to moderate them. And Grey Hester, Lord Willow, and Mouse will be moderating the chat. It's the first time I have chat moderators. Thanks guys, and chat, let's make sure that they don't have too much to do today. Yeah, that was everything. At this point I want to hand over the word to the moderator, that Manu. Take it away.
All right, thank you, Reiner. First of all, welcome to everyone. It's good to have you guys here. As Reiner said, we do have a chatbot that will listen for commands to filter them. The reason we have that is so that everyone has a fair chance to get their questions in. So it's going to be in first order. There is a 10-minute timeout. So you'll ask your question and you can only ask another one in 10 minutes. That hopefully gives enough time for people to ask their questions. To actually ask a question, you'll be typing in !Q followed by your question or !question, whichever you feel is easier for you to type out. So you guys can already start doing that right now, or when would you like to start?
I think Jane just started, so...
Cool, well, there you go. Go for it, guys. Alright, and then to start the panel off, I guess we'll drop our first question in, and then continue in order. So, Reiner, you're actually in
first, or we're skipping that?
Yeah. Yeah, we can. Sure, go for it. Why don't you lead us over?
Start? Okay. For those who do not know me, my name is Hubert. I'm a Neverwinter YouTuber, making guides and informational videos about the game. I also stream the game from time to time, and I make, in my eyes, very useful and free-to-use tools for Neverwinter players, and sometimes even for the Cryptic team. That was it.
Oh, you want me to
Go ahead.
first? All right. I'm Jared. I'm the lead systems designer on the forums. I'm No Worries. I think I've only been on one previous stream, so a lot of people probably don't know me yet.
Oh, they will. They will. Now that you've done now 2, you're going to be on more. Okay, yeah, I guess me. I am Chris, or Julia, the community manager for Neverwinter. It's really lovely to do these streams because other people get to stress out about the setup. So I just want to say thank you to everyone involved putting this together, and just we're really happy to be able to do this stuff with all you.
Hi, I'm Mia. I'm from Sweden. I play Neverwinter on PC. I've played it since Module 4. I stream and draw fan art for the game.
My name is Natsu. I'm from Germany. I play this game since Mod 8. Play almost all the classes. Wrote some guides on the Warlock, and yeah, really enjoyed Neverwinter. Sharp, you go next, maybe?
Yeah, hi, I'm Sharp. I'm from South Africa. I write guides, and yeah, that's all you really need to know about.
Hey guys, I'm Didmano. I'm also from South Africa, and I stream Neverwinter, mainly, as you guys know, and I love coding. I like to write bots and stuff. Are we missing someone? Is that it, Julia?
That was all.
Yeah. Cool. So, Rana, why don't you take the lead with our first question to get us
First question.
started?
Okay. We did prepare a couple of questions for ourselves before we go to the chat questions, and there's a lot coming in already. So, my first question would be: the CDP featured a lot of good ideas, and for the both of you, in your opinion, and taking resources out of the equation, which idea did you like the most?
Oh, I'm going to start with a big open-ended question. All right. Yeah, there's certainly a ton of ideas in there. A lot of it touched on some of the stuff that we've been thinking internally already. Item rewards, I know, is a big focus for the players, because right now we don't have a lot of different options for players. The dungeon grind isn't the most interesting because it's just waiting for the right drop. There was a lot of different views on that from the players on different ways we could approach those rewards. That's something we're going to be tackling on M20. So I think that one touched closest to me, and I think also because that's going to be a big part that I'm working on personally for the next 6 months, 9 months. So I think that's where a lot of my focus went, and I think it'd be tough to pick out a specific one, especially because I have to go back and look at them all. But I think dungeon rewards specifically is probably the big focus from the CDP that showed the players and us both agree that that's a weak area.
Julia?
Pretty much for a lot of these questions, I'm just going to be smiling and nodding. I'll just to say, I mean, a lot of you folks are used to me whenever I have my streams. You ask me questions, and if they're systems, I usually say, I can't answer that. I don't know the answer. So I would like to have, now that we actually have someone from systems, I'd like to have them in the spotlight. When I can, I'll answer, but I don't really have much to add other than I am finding these CDPs incredibly valuable, and I'm really looking forward to doing more of them, especially the CDP on the CDP, because we have been getting some great conversations and I'm really glad that Chris saw the value in starting that initiative. So, just really happy with that.
Okay, thank you. 1 second, because I keep getting some remarks on the volumes.
The audio, huh?
Audio is it not loud enough? Wait, I should be able to do this, right? 1 second. Why can I not?
Can I answer a question from stream?
Not really the format, but sure.
It's just about Chris coming on stream or not, so I wanted to answer that one. He's going to try to make it. He had a meeting. He's going to try to make it like in the next 15-20 minutes, but I can't promise it. He had an important meeting. Sorry, I will not ruin the format anymore, I promise.
It's okay. There's a audio compressor within the window of Twitch, but I'm not running it from Twitch. Audio is fine, maybe a little too loud. Okay, I can turn it down a little bit.
I think maybe just ungain us, because you said you had a gain, right? Maybe just remove that for us.
I've gained for everyone, so that's not...
Yeah, exactly.
I just turn it down a little bit. Good, I'm good, the others are the I'm just setting the mic closer to my face and reducing the volume. Maybe, I hope that's gonna fix it. Okay, let's continue, because... Just mute everybody.
All right.
Sure.
Alright, so I'll continue then with the next one. Sharp is after. So I have a question. Currently, the main way of earning Astral Diamonds to progress one's characters via the random queues, master expeditions, and to some extent crafting. What are your thoughts on adding a daily event that has a player complete randomized tasks that, upon completion, reward a healthy amount of AD, so as to add more to the pool of AD farming sources?
Yeah, interestingly, we've explored stuff like that, not necessarily from the direction of AD, but from a direction of giving players better wrappers for the stuff to do, especially newer players that are trying to figure out what to do at endgame, where should they go. And we've talked about having a kind of wrapper quest that was either daily or weekly, or maybe one of each, that was, complete legacy campaign tasks, or, do zone stuff or do queues, and then did give a big reward. That is possible. That could be an AD system. I think one of the issues with random queues is they do get a lot of focus for AD because they are such big amounts, and it makes a lot of people feel they have to do those, and that is the most necessary thing. And while it's good content, it'd be nice if we had other ways that players could get to that cap without feeling the only thing they could ever do is random queues. So I do think we have room to spread out where AD comes from, for sure. And we have been exploring exactly that kind of idea, so that could be a possibility in the future.
Okay, cool, thank you. Sharp Edge?
It has been stated that there's an overall plan that will be implemented as a result of the CDP in about 1 year's time. As we get closer to that deadline, are we going to be getting more information about what is being implemented as a result of the feedback, or is that just something that we're going to eventually see when it just comes straight onto?
I definitely think that's something Chris will, assuming he makes it, will also want to touch on, because I know that's exactly the type of stuff he is very interested in doing. I think our process going forward is for system stuff, when possible, we're definitely going to talk about it ahead of time. We're going to give more heads up and more discussion. I think for a lot of the specific content, especially some of the smaller episodes, you won't get much of a heads up because gets more into a spoiler territory. So yeah, I do think for the systems, especially like rewards and stuff, you guys will start hearing stuff before it rolls out to any of the platforms, for sure.
Yeah, and Chris and I have actually had this conversation, especially when we were still talking in the initial stages of the CDP, what it involves to create an action plan based on the discussion, and how that's going to translate into the development time and what players get to see. And one of our common goals was that we wanted to have the discussion with players as many times throughout the process as possible, so that there was no surprise when you logged on to preview one day and all of a sudden there are all these system things you've never heard of. We want to avoid that kind of shock to the system. But when it comes to storyline, as Jared mentioned, we don't want to ruin the story spoiler. So for that, we might kind of scale back a little bit. But more transparency and more dialogue is one of the original goals, and we still maintain it as our top goal.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I have a question about rewards. When can we expect a change in the loot tables and rewards, specifically talking about dungeon chests? And will it be a gradual implementation or coming all at once longer down the line?
So I don't think it'll be gradual. It could be a couple bigger parts and not necessarily all at once, but I don't think it would be a trickle because everything's so interconnected. I would expect the majority of it would come with M20. I know that's a long time away, but that's not to say some of the pieces couldn't start falling into place before then. But when you're talking about changing how item rewards are done, how players achieve those, that's a pretty big aspect of the game, so it's going to take a while to get it all done right. So it's probably M20 will be when you see most of that.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. All right. Natsu.
Do you see a problem with the role that the current level 70 dungeons play in terms of progression, like how they're only really in the random queue for AD? And if so, do you have a plan to fix that and make them more relevant?
The fact that they're level 70 isn't so much the concern. I think we always want to have a group of more casual dungeons that people can get into easier. The requirements to completion are a lot easier. So it's, the type of thing that if you only have 20, 30 minutes to play, you could jump into the leveling queue or the skirmish queue and know pretty well that you're going to succeed and get that reward. I do think we will probably adjust the makeup of the queues and probably the settings and difficulties of some of the dungeons with M20 to go along with rewards. It's a little tough to say exactly what that would be because whatever I say now will probably be adjusted a few times. But my personal goal is to make sure that there is a very accessible queue for everybody, including new players, and then that will have some type of reward system tied to help players and give some components that are good to endgame players. But I think endgame players will still be more focused on the epic dungeon and trial queues. So I wouldn't call them necessarily a problem right now, outside of the fact that all of the queues in the dungeon rewards needs a bit of a rework, but I think we'll always have some easy ones and some hard ones out there.
Nice. All right. Just want a quick reminder to those of you that just joined in now. You guys can ask your questions with the !Q command followed by your question. We'll be taking those in order of appearance, which we'll be going through now. Rainer, you're up.
Yeah. First question from Jane. Thank you for your question. You mentioned several times that you plan to rework the rewards in a more fundamental way. And now, given we are after the CDP, what can we expect in future endgame dungeons, like the current LOM and IC? There is an overall plan as a result of the CDP. The roadmap shows the rollout of in about a year. Will we see more detailed plans about some of these targets before they are implemented? Is that the same as chart?
It's similar. So yes, as we said, the information will come out before it goes live. We won't see any changes to the rewards for Tom or Infernal Citadel in the short term because everything will get changed over together. But that is a big focus. It's a little early to say what that plan will be. We're still working out as a design team, and once we have more of that solidified, I think we can start leaking out some of the information. So probably won't be able to say too much for even another 2 months or something before we've really settled on a plan, but then we can start letting some of it out.
All right, great stuff. The next question that we have, there's a lot of, sorry, I'm just going to grab the next one in order. Okay, that's with Stronghold. Okay, so Zypherio. Taking note that you block 80 gain to 100k per day to be viable, player new person needs around 45 days, so new players need around 45 days to get to mid-game content, and something around 130 days to even consider entering endgame. How do you want to keep new players engaged that long? Isn't the point of shouldn't the MMO be based around time spent? Right now you're artificially blocking progression because the only way to progress through a game is earning 80 and buying better enchantments / bondings.
I wouldn't say the only way to advance is that. I think early game players have a lot more focuses than just AD. You're still earning equipment directly that you're equipping. You're still getting your early mounts, your early enchantments that don't have high levels of investment yet. And so that does scale up over time, which is also why you start earning more AD at the end game. We'll always have some time gate on AD to keep the economy in a good place, also to combat any excessive 24-hour botting to just get a ton of that. So that part will always be there. I do think part of our streamlining that we're talking about with M20 will solve a lot of the leveling process. We'll introduce AD in areas sooner and get players involved in all that, and also help them actually get to mid-game and end-game properly without needing a ton of AD. So I think it's not so much the gate on the AD and where it comes from, it's adjusting that leveling experience and making sure they don't need that much AD early on in the game to get to where they need to go.
All right, Sharp, you're up.
Okay, I'll take the question from Chiny that got missed. Are there any plans to update the Stronghold, for example, new buildings for more guild boons, more guild boon slots, and raising the level of the Stronghold?
Interestingly enough, before we decided to start tackling the streamlining and everything else, M20 was tentatively planned to be a Stronghold update, so that hopefully shows that we do want to update the Strongholds. It's been pushed off in favor of this other stuff, but it's still on our radar. We do know it's become pretty stagnant, especially for long-term players. It's also very prohibitive to try to split off and start your own guild due to the cost to get one up. So we do want to tackle the Strongholds. It's just been pushed off a bit further to tackle the rewards and progression first.
Yeah, and several months ago, I'd heard about the plan of having M20 be Stronghold focused, and that's always a frustrating part for me, like where I don't want to say too much, like, oh, we're planning on it, we're working on it, but if the plans can change, and in this case, this was the direct result of us kind of realizing what is a priority right now. Not that one isn't a priority, but which one do we need to work on first? And in this case, Strongholds got pushed back. But it was on the pipeline, and I'd seen it, and so I know a lot of people wanted it.
And just as a quick note, because the chat's right there, and I happen to notice it, someone said, why not tackle them together? They take a lot of resources. We couldn't possibly tackle both of them together with just how big each of them are. So it has to be one or the other for right now.
Great, thanks, Mia.
Yeah, another question, Dr. Jack. Along with adjusting rewards, will you be taking another look at the amount of currency it takes to make a Stronghold voucher from campaign areas, especially the Dread Ring? Currently, it takes 3 full days of questing to make 1 voucher.
I think we were holding that off for the Stronghold update. That's not to say we couldn't look at those prices in the short term, knowing... with players knowing that stuff might change in a different direction later on. But that's certainly a type of thing that we could take a quick look at and see if we want to make a short-term change. Yeah.
Cool. Meltzer?
There's a question from Pipter. Regarding the reward system, is there any chance for us to get a better rework or maybe a full buff on some of the weapon and armor enchantments? These require big investments at this point, and most of them are underperforming others that, in my opinion, are in a good spot, judging about the effort you put in to rank them up from scratch.
Yeah, weapon and armor enchants are always interesting. They've been around for a long time, and we've generally tried to stick to what they originally were trying to do and what their focuses were trying to do, and we've made adjustments to them. One of the considerations for the rewards is whether or not we want to tackle those, if we want to change their core functionality, or if we just want to rework some of them. They are one of the pieces that we're looking at, so I can't be sure on which way we'll go with that or what will necessarily change, but they are one of the parts that we're looking at for the rewards changes.
All right, awesome, thanks. Reiner?
I guess one of our own questions again.
Sure.
I had a question in the mindset of building worlds, and it's relating to one of my ideas in the CDP. What do you think about the idea of having people outside of Cryptic Studios creating content that is used inside of the game?
That's an interesting question. I'm sure Julia will have some for that one. I'm sure Chris would. My first guess would be that there is a bit of a legal nightmare there. And we also don't have any good tool set for players to necessarily directly create content for our game, so that would be in itself a big investment. I could almost positively say no in any form of short term, but I don't know what the possibilities would be for that in longer term.
Yeah, this is purely from a business perspective. It is a legal quandary that would take resources and a lot of time. Folks in the content creator program saw how long it took for legal to review the content creator guidelines. So it does become a legal issue in terms of having to work with not just our publisher, but the licensor. So it's something that it could be explored, but it wouldn't be anything that could be done very quickly, or I wouldn't be able to put a deadline on when we'd have a resolution for it, because it's a big topic with lawyers.
Well, I understand it's a very big topic, but there's also a lot of gain to be made, of course, because you get resources from outside that are doing work for you. I was not necessarily focusing on the Foundry, because I know the Foundry is difficult to keep up. It could also be used in different areas, maybe, like the guides thing that I touched upon in the CDP.
I need to interrupt 1 second because Chris just walked in, so I'm going to offer him my spot since we only have 2 working mics.
You don't have to offer my spot, just...
No?
Everything's going fine, right?
Yeah.
Good. Do they want to speak with me or not? Because I'm quite happy you guys just chat.
Do people want Chris to step in real quick, or do you want us to say this way? It's your call.
Honestly, I don't mind. It's fine.
People say
some people in
Okay.
chat are also.
You are requested, Chris.
Okay.
You can be me for a while.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry,
I
Chris.
was hoping you'd get away with that.
Nope. It is your job to see as a EP.
I mean, you can take my spot.
Oh, no.
Any exciting questions? Any drama?
Yeah,
They just actually finished asking a business question.
Oh.
you could give your take on it for sure. They were just asking the possibility of having people outside Cryptic Studios create content for Neverwinter.
Oh, an outside studio.
Oh, having like players or outside.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
We can hear you.
I've got some crazy ideas about how we could basically compensate members of the CDP, which I'm not going to go into it right now necessarily. I don't know, what was your answer to that?
That's probably a legal nightmare, and there's a lot of hurdles.
So I would approach it from the point of view, yes, I would absolutely like us to be able to do that. So,
I see. Good cop, bad cop.
yeah, but I tend to be crazy and work backwards. And so, yeah, the legal side of it could be interesting. I mean, the other part of it as well is, what do we mean by content? Are we talking arts, like
in
that kind of thing?
In the broadest form of the words. So it could be indeed dungeons, it could be guides, it could be whatever.
I guess what I think my answer to that would be is I would definitely like to be able to compensate and have external teams helping us to evolve the game and the space. CDP is an example of that. The question is, if it was a dungeon, for example, if that was distributed development, is that the best way to achieve the highest quality versus the CDP, which we are actually getting seriously high quality, at least confirmation, ideas, the insights into how the player views the game and so on. So anywhere where it's actually useful for us all as a community and business, then the answer is yes. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but it's not an easy question to answer, to be honest.
All right, great. Hey, Chris, by the way. It's good to have you here. Speaking of long-winded questions, I do have one for you.
Okay.
Was changing the random epic dungeon queue item level requirement to 20,000 done to slow the progress of newer players? Because currently that and the random trial queue are the two main sources of Astral Diamonds for newer players, without which they cannot afford the upgrades they will need to take on harder content. In most cases, the random trial queue can be far more challenging, yet the item level is lower. Most epic dungeons have a far lower item level requirement, but due to Lair of the Mad Mage being added, it got pushed to 20,000 as a result. Could the random queues possibly offer dungeons you have the item level for, instead of requiring the highest dungeon's item level before even being able to queue as a compromise?
So yeah, there's a lot there. The first thing I would say is I don't view the Epic Dungeon trial queue as focused on new players. That's where more experienced players should go. I get that that's where the biggest single chunks of AD are, so obviously people want to get to that as soon as they can. Adding a dungeon to that is not intended to slow anyone down. We did say from the beginning that new dungeons would get moved in that queue over time, and this was just the time for Lair of the Mad Mage to move into that. And as new dungeons move in, the item level will go up. That item level is only about 2/3 of the way to max item level, so we do try to bring it into the queue when it will still be the majority of the players can still continue to access it. And as we talked about earlier, I do think we need AD sources in more regular content and in other types of content so that players don't feel the only thing they can do is the random queues. I feel like I'm missing a piece of that, so let me look at the question.
Too long.
It was just trying to make sure I don't leave anything off of there. So we did talk about early on what requirements would be for players to get into a random queue. The leveling queue does look at what you've unlocked the item level for and let people go to that. The problem with something like the Epic Dungeon queue and the Trial queue is players would abuse that pretty hard by just meeting, for example, the item level requirement of Epic Demogorgon, so that then they keep queuing and that's the only thing that pops and they get a nice easy way to their AD. So we do have to make sure that people hit all of the requirements for all the dungeons in those queues. But again, we'll be making some adjustments to the queues system overall for M20, I'm sure. So,
just to answer, it's not even a question. Skylar Cara saying, cryptic, they don't. You look at numbers, not players' minds. Thus, the system does not work. We play the game. It's not as simple as that. We're building on years and years of foundations. I would recommend to you, Sky, that you read the CDP, because I think you'll see that we actually almost pay more attention to what the players say than we do numbers. There are three things that we rely on. The team, in terms of their experience, metrics, and community. If you do not have those three, then you're not going to understand how to make your game better, how to basically pioneer. So, sorry, I disagree with that comment, but on the positive side, take the time to read the CDP. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Right, I just want to keep things on topic because poor Scarf is having to moderate a lot of these questions. Just to remind you guys, the questions here are on the rewards progression. So when you ask your questions, please make sure they're related to that, else they will be ignored. And with that being said, Sharp Edge, you're next.
With the Masterwork update that is planned on the roadmap, can we expect significant changes to Masterwork in terms of how it's rewarding the players, or is it going to be similar in scope to the previous Masterworks? Yeah.
Is that the end of it? Okay.
We answered that in the end of the last CDP.
Did we?
We do.
Well, to recap that,
sure.
This one is just another tier of the existing Masterwork to give people new top-end items to grind. It does have a couple quests with it as well. I wouldn't expect any significant changes to the structure of Masterwork until we do significant changes to the rewards overall, and then those two will, if everything works out well and we come up with the right designs that we're working on, we'll actually start tying together more. And our goal is to work towards a profession system that stays relevant with each module instead of these jumps where it goes for a period of time not relevant and then all of a sudden we jump it up and it's good for a bit but then it falls off. We're trying to tie it more to the actual endgame rewards to keep it always relevant.
All right, great. Mia.
Oh, yeah. I have a question about bound stuff. Is there any interest in making a purchasable unbinding token, which would allow bound things such as a mount or a companion to go to another character?
I'll answer that. Again, it's my fault for spending so long to release the proposal at the end of the CDP. Again, that answer's in the CDP. The answer is that we're going to do a review of all categories in the game, including mounts, with a focus of trying to push things to be, which has already been happening, be more account bound than character bound. Does that answer your question?
I can add a little bit,
Yeah.
slightly more to that. So that part, absolutely, we're working on making more of our stuff be account-based, including the rewards and the events. So you're doing it once for the account, you're getting rewards for the account. An actual unbind token in the short term is a bit dangerous because there are a lot of events, especially stuff like Anniversary and other stuff, where we give a bunch of bound to character rewards, and we give so much because it's bound, it's safe that way. And the moment that we start giving unbind tokens, we have to think, all right, what if someone has 50 characters and they go and do this with all of them, collect them all, and then use the unbind? So that's why we're actually working towards more of a bind to account system overall, so that people have better alting experiences without having to deal with that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Thanks, Natsu.
Since you plan to do an easier version of the next trial coming with mod 19, do you also plan to do the same for the dungeons that you will be reworking at the end of this year? So can we expect different tiers of difficulty when you reintroduce them to us?
There's a lot up in the air on that. So we are trying easy mode for the upcoming trial, as you mentioned, and that's going to be our first attempt at that. We're certainly going to learn what parts of that worked and what didn't, and tackle that for the next trial. I think an easy version depends on what we're trying to accomplish. I think most dungeons, not necessarily all, are achievable to players once they get to a certain tier, whereas the trials aren't necessarily, because they have so many tough mechanics. And so the question becomes, maybe we'll do story mode dungeons, where at the end of a campaign you first do an easy version of it where you see it. You could even possibly solo it when you see the mechanics, and then that unlocks the group version. And so we are looking at different ways to tackle that stuff, to allow people access to the stories, allow people access to things that might be too hard for them, but there's a lot to still figure out there.
Yeah, the easy answer is yes, but that may not necessarily be the best thing for dungeons. And the reason I say yes is because our goal is to make the game as accessible and as discoverable and as rewarding as possible for a variety of different players. So whilst the direct answer we don't have an absolute answer for, the spirit and intent of the question is that yes, we're aiming to execute in a way that meets the goals of the question.
All right.
Nice. All right, Reiner, should we go back to user questions?
Sure. We skipped one at the start. I don't know why it's moderated, but Galactic Underwear had a question. Eventually, once the new implemented rewards and progression are in place, whatever they may be, will you have a review team in place to make sure that with each new module they will be updated and not left behind, as we often saw in the past?
A review team. So as designers and QA, we are a review team. Things left behind in the past wasn't necessarily a lack of review, like Professions falling behind and not having new Masterwork wasn't a lack of review, it was just a lack of time and a lack of resources.
It's not just that either, it's also the fact that vertical progression by its very nature.
Well, yeah, I'm not talking about updating old rewards to be new high-end rewards, but talking about the reward system. So I think if the answer is, are we going to have like a permanent closed beta group that reviews that and gives us feedback? Probably not, but we are using closed betas a lot more now for new stuff, and we'll continue to expand that.
But to talk about what Jared's saying from a business standpoint, he was talking about time and resources. The plan now is to have horizontal rewards be in episodes and vertical be in mods, and so that gives the team more time, and by its very nature, more time just in terms of the overall pacing of the game per year, to spend more time in that particular area of progression.
All right, great stuff. Next question from Florida Smurf. Do you have any plan to make campaigns more progressive based from one campaign to the next, like the original opening setup to Icewind Dale, when you need X amount of boons before being able to enter?
Sorry, was that companions or campaigns?
Campaigns, sorry.
Oh, campaigns. So campaigns they have a recommended item level. We don't really gate you from going in if you're below that, but they do kind of have a progression that's highly recommended. Whether we would hard gate that, I don't know, because oftentimes, especially if a player is newer and they've gotten, let's say, to 20, 22k item level, but they haven't had time with the campaigns yet, and a new one comes out, they're going to want to do that. They're going to want to be part of that group and playing that kind of stuff. So we're going to want to try to make sure people can get into that outside of having to complete, say, 3 or 4 campaigns first or whatever. Whether or not we'll start putting in harder item lock level gating, I don't know, but I don't think we'd probably gate people in that way.
Was that question also about through line in terms of narrative? Did I misunderstand it? Was it like, you do one campaign and you have a more cohesive like narrative arc experience? Because if that's part of the question, then it's certainly a goal that we'll have in terms of streamlining the first-time user experience, and then it's hard-coded, for want of a better term, into the episode structure in terms of arc from end of episode 4, for example, to the next mod, and then the mod exits with a continued arc into the next season and the next episode. So that's something that I think we'd try to emulate across the whole of the game where possible, if that was part of the question.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Great. Sharp Edge.
Okay. Per the CDP proposal, horizontal progression is per episode and vertical is per mod. So does that mean that unlocking all the options during one mod will become less attractive due to the new set of horizontal options in the following mod, which are going to be vertically?
Missed the last part of that.
I think I got the gist of it. I think the whole... if you want to repeat it, that's fine.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, it's probably quite important.
Yeah, per the CDP proposal, horizontal upgrades is per episode. So in each episode, the gear is going to be roughly on the same level. And then vertical is per mod. So mod after mod, there's horizontal progression. Does that mean that the upgrades that are unlocked during one mod will get less attractive due to the fact that there's going to be a new set of horizontal upgrades during the next mod, which are vertically superior?
I don't think necessarily. I think it depends on how we approach horizontal. That's one of our, I would say, most up in the air things that we're still looking on and brainstorming and working out the issues on. But there could certainly be horizontal options that carry over to new equipment that's still useful, and so it's worth getting it if you haven't done it yet. But that area is still so early on that it's tough to give any specifics.
Yeah, like I was saying, we're not kidding when we say we're almost in lockstep with the CDP. So when we're talking about, we still, we have ideas of what horizontal might be. We need to think about costs in regard to horizontal, because horizontal progression is generally more expensive. Well, it is more expensive than vertical. So we're still, we're at the point now, maybe not even now, maybe a month, I don't know Jared's calendar and the team's calendar in this regard, where we'll be fleshing out more of what the difference is between the horizontal equipment and items versus vertical.
All right, awesome. Just a quick shout out to Tip. You're doing an amazing job. Thank you so much for filtering out these questions. And Mia, you're up next.
All right. Megabirds asked, can you explain a little bit what you meant by expanded game state tuning capabilities on the roadmap?
Sure. To put that as simply as I can, it's to basically give critters item level, so that scaling and difficulty is a lot more focused and more accurate. Right now, players have an item level, and with the exception of some things like bonding runestone, there's actually a formula to that, which is 20 rating points per item level. So it gives a good representation of where something is with item level. Critters are still on actually a XP level up to 80, and then post 80 we have to add these custom buffs for each zone and manually set stuff. And so what we're looking to do is have critters switch over to the item level system, and so then we can say critters in this area are 20k item level, therefore players that are 20k item level should do fine against them. And then as we scale players up and down, that will make that even more accurate than what we're bringing with M19. So it's really just to get the balance in a better place through being able to modify critters easier.
Not in regard to the question, the answer that Jared just gave, but if there's ever a time you feel like we haven't answered your question properly now or in the future, tell us.
Awesome. Natsu?
Kovu asked, reworking currencies should also be a part of the rewards and progression topic. Are you guys planning to rework/add stuff into shops like the campaign stores, for example transmute, or to the Vault of Piety?
I'll talk about this from high level first, then Jared will talk about it more micro detail. So in CDP 1, Superstore was put forward the idea there of basically being able to use different types of currency for different things. The high level answer to this, Jared will talk more in the details, is yes, we are streamlining currencies, and yes, we are moving forward with the intent to have players have systems whereby there's less RNG around earning your target and what you're looking for, and also to make sure that any bridges that are missing in the game, for example, content gated behind item level and being able to have that item level to get to that content, are ironed out and bridges are built there. So, but if you want to go in more detail.
Yeah, the Vault of Piety stuff almost certainly changed. We're actually having conversations on that currently, so I'll hold off until a bit later to give specifics on that once we have sign-off. Campaign stores have their own issues where we have, say, 10 or so endgame campaigns. How do you make sure the store from the lowest of those is still useful and the store at the highest is still useful? So we're looking into how to change the campaign stores. We're looking into reducing some of the amount of currencies because, as most of you know by looking at your currency sheet, it's a nightmare. There's hundreds. By reducing some currencies that players that don't necessarily need to be there, we can put better focus on the stores that are left and make the rewards better and more interesting. There's a lot coming with that. Some of it I think we'll probably be able to talk about sooner than the other stuff, maybe in a couple months. So we'll just have to get there and then be able to start talking about more specifics.
Awesome, great. Reiner, are we doing good on progression with the questions? Are we getting to them fast enough?
My question was, there were some mixed opinions or ideas about the speed of leveling to 80. Before you said it should be quicker, and in the CDP a lot of people also said it should be slowed down. In my opinion, both slowing down and speeding up the leveling speed have some merit. After seeing the CDP discussions, do you still feel the leveling process should be sped up, and why?
It's I think if you have to kind of forget about our current progression lines through the game in order to be able to kind of understand and answer that question. In that we're not talking about speeding it up and slowing it down in terms of the current through path of the content that you see now and how it's laid out. So it will be a different experience with it's going to be a different progression experience. It may well be faster. It's going to be more focused, but it's not going to be at the expense of enjoying what content we've made that's really good.
Yeah, and I think people's concerns about it being faster is that players won't know what they're doing. And that is exactly the streamlining that we want to fix, that we have a good path of proper tutorialization, proper reward structures, that players are learning the systems and being in the right place to compete in endgame. And I think if that's in the right place, the speed is almost inconsequential. It's just however long it takes to make sure players understand the stuff. And if that's 10 hours or if that's 30 hours, it's whatever we find to be the right part, that players have a good grasp of the game before diving into all the end game stuff.
Yeah, speeding up doesn't mean removal of experience and content. It means better preparing you for being able to enjoy and understand the content more in a quicker period of time.
So better guiding the player.
Yeah.
Rather than, yeah.
But the experience is also going to be different as well, but that's not something that we could go into at the moment. That said, the closer we get to working all that out and having a more defined proposal, I think that we'll put that in as a subtopic in the CDP. Like, we've got a CDP about the CDP coming up soon. So I think that we'll both talk more about how we intend to... We can't just have a CDP, for example, and then spend 7 months working on it, and then, oh, here it is, and you haven't helped us course correct it. You haven't helped us with feedback and that kind of thing. So that's something I want to discuss in the next CDP.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, these have been some really tough, interesting questions. So here's something hopefully really simple. When in a dungeon's reward chest and unsure of an item's worth, there's no current way to check its value unless you happen to have a friend you can message outside of the game to check for you or take a gamble. What are the chances of either one, allowing us to be able to open the auction house while in the chest screen to check for ourselves, or two, display the cheapest or average price of the item in the tooltip?
So the unable to open the auction house while that chest is open isn't so much us stopping you from looking there, it's that window needs focus to do what it's doing, and having them both open and interacting with items can cause things to get messed up. So that's why you can't open the auction house and work with that while the chest is open. I can't say that we would necessarily tie the two systems, because right now the chest has no concept of the auction house, so we'd have to engineer that in for it to check the prices and give you the updates, which would be a lot of work. That would bump some other stuff out to do. I think capitalists are great, and I like to play the auction house and all that myself, but I think, at least for the near term, part of that will have to be just having a good understanding of the value of items and sometimes taking a gamble on something.
I think the issue with that, and that's something I'm seeing at the moment, is what I'm playing is I see something that I think in my mind is valuable. I then take it, I leave, and I check, and then I feel dejected and not rewarded, and so there's almost this double negative. I was actually thinking about that last night. I think that that's something we'd have to think more about in terms of how, because it's not just for, you know, capitalists and people playing the auction house. It's kind of for everyone, right? So I think that's something that we'll think about. I mean, I just don't have a solution to that at the moment. Like
I think on that level, the restructuring of dungeon rewards will solve more of the problem you ran into, because we'll hopefully get the least valuable stuff out of there. But yeah.
But even when it's like, you know, you see a companion or something in there, and it's like, oh, that looks cool. I'm sure it's going to be worth a lot. Or you look at the companion and it's like, you know, because we've got a lot of companions, that doesn't look so cool. I don't think that's worth a lot. And then you re-roll, and then Flounder or someone or Lord Willow says, I can't believe you just did that. You just wasted, you know, 500,000 AD. So yeah, it's a good question. We need to think more about it. Like, one of the things with the CDP and our promise and intent to the community is we're not gonna. The whole point of CDP isn't placation, nor is it like all about agreement. We want to be realistic, and we want to be as transparent and honest as we can be, which is completely transparent and honest. And so if we don't have an answer to something just yet, but we do say we'll look into it, we will. I just don't want to say, oh yeah, that's an easy fix and we'll get it done, when we don't actually know how to do that currently.
Right, just a quick follow-up for No Worries, because you mentioned that you can't interact with both of them, yet you can open the auction house and your inventory at the same time. Isn't that something that is doable?
It's different mechanics. So that the chest is holding basically a temporary bag of items for you, waiting for you to decide whether you want to take them or not. And if you start interacting with the auction house, I think some of that focus, and with the rerolls, I think there's just some tech issues there. There are some other windows in the game that also don't let you do two different ones at a time, but other pairs do, and most of that's from technical limitations.
I mean, we could certainly look into it. Also, part of this is our game. There's a lot of inconsistency in terms of core pillars of what you can and you can't do. Like you're saying, some screens you can open two things here, other screens you can't. You know, sometimes you have to watch all the way through a cutscene, and sometimes you don't, and you know there are reasons for that. So I would like us to be more consistent with our everything, every mechanic and system in the game that we have. We'll be working towards it.
Sharp.
Okay, this question is going to be a bit more specific. Which player group were the rewards of Infernal Citadel designed to appeal to, and do you feel that overall that group has been satisfied with them now that the dungeon has been...
Can I answer that question? Because you go in more detail. So, Sharp, as you know, I think I was around 19k when Mod 18 first came out on PC. So I could say for that, I'm now at 23.8. I could say for me, the rewards in that were really, really good. I don't know how I would categorize myself as a player. I guess moving towards end game, but for me, the rewards were great, and the ability to get even better gear from the new dungeon was also great. So that's just one player's feedback. I'd also like to comment on the fact that Jared specifically did a lot of retuning of rewards prior to the release of Mod 18 in a very short period of time. So there is no doubt, it's unquestionable that the rewards did improve after preview and before launch.
At least to give credit out, other system designers actually did most of that work. I just told them to do it. So I want to make sure they get credit.
Thanks. I'll go back to the team and I'll be throwing oranges at me.
But that said, yeah, I mean, basically what Chris said, those rewards were meant for players who were at the end game, but they weren't min-maxers. They hadn't gone all the way. They weren't up, 26, 28K yet. We had just had Tom, which was rewards specifically for that group. And so I do understand that mid-max group was a little disappointed with some of the M18 rewards, but we do have to try to get a balance in there for everyone. And so they were made for more of the general end game crowd instead of the very top end.
So,
and to answer the second part of your question,
can I just ask Sharp? What did you say?
I was just saying, to answer the second part of the question, I think so far it's been received pretty well from feedback that we've seen. I'm sure there are some players still a bit unhappy with it, but it's been pretty well.
There's always going to be unhappy players. So I'd like to hear Sharp's response to what Jared just said, if that's okay. Just quickly.
The reason that I was asking that because from my perspective, okay, from my perspective, I'm at the absolute end game. So for me, there are no rewards there. But I also don't really see, if I was a new player and I was coming in, I don't see why I'd want to run Infernal Citadel. That's why I was curious, because this is something I often like to think about. If I was a new player, how would I go about gearing myself? And to me, it just doesn't seem like it's an appealing piece of content to run.
But you can't look at it like that because you're not a new player. That's one of the problems that we have internally as well, is we have to smash everything apart to understand how to move forward, at least in the mind we do, because otherwise we can't see the wood for the trees. We can't see properly which parts of the game are actually unhealthy, which everyone thinks is healthy, and so on. And I could give examples of that if you like AD, and the paths to get AD is unhealthy. I could do the new dungeon and I can get iron gear. So I don't understand why there would be this question around why would that be appealing for a new player? Because for me as a new player, it was appealing to me because it helped get me from 18 or 19k item level to 24, which opened up new areas of content for me and a more playable, a more enjoyable play experience with my paladin. Like maybe this is a longer discussion and stuff, but there's no question that for a lot of people, for some I don't know how many, the rewards were actually really good. I mean, I've heard multiple people say that the Juma bag is the best chest or bag in the whole of the game, for example.
Yeah. All right, Mia.
All right. Old weapons can be confusing for new players in terms of which one they should get. Would you consider turning old weapons into strictly transmutes to avoid confusion, which would also make transmutes available to all players?
Yeah, that's actually one of the interesting questions that highlights some of the internal process. I would say as early as even probably a couple of years ago, we actually had a conversation on the design team about just that, and there were people on different sides that wanted to change them to transmutes to make it very clear what they were. There are people on the other side that wanted to leave them as they were, just in case people happen to want them or were collectors in some way. I personally am more in favor to making more outdated items transmutes. I think it's just a much clearer presentation. I think there's a big difference between seeing a transmute in an end chest and realizing, oh, that's an option to change my visual, versus seeing a weapon that's way below stats you'd ever want and saying, why is this, completely useless weapon there? I do think we will probably switch more to outdated stuff goes to transmutes going forward. So that's probably what you'll start seeing maybe around M20.
All right, great.
All right, that's it.
So in mod 15, K-Team challenges were introduced where you had to complete a run deathless or with minimum item level. The system kind of failed in my opinion because there were no proper rewards at the time and it was also never updated. Do you consider updating or expanding the system and giving it proper rewards to give endgame players a harder challenge, similar to how the story mode will be supposed to give newer players a version to get into harder content?
Yeah,
so there's also something for endgame players to challenge them more.
Yeah, we've been trying out different stuff. K-Team was a first attempt. It was also when we were first getting some different scaling and some different tuning stuff in place. And we also wanted to get players into more of that to try some of it. And then we did the Tales of Old, which was another version of what if we attempted harder and more challenging content that way for in-game players. And so we've been learning and looking at the feedback from different ones. And I think we're going to keep trying different ones and keep honing in on the aspects that really work. And I think at some point we will settle in on a system that we kind of want to roll out more wide stream to a lot of stuff, but I think we still have a little bit of design space in there to decide exactly how we want it to go. It's definitely not gone. We know everyone wants some kind of challenge mode or hardcore mode, and we're looking at the best ways to do that.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you. Reiner, back to you.
Well, I don't know. Do you guys still have time? Because the hour is actually up. Yeah, you guys
yes.
Okay? For more?
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to more chat questions. Just wanted to check. I think the next up is from Ultima Joe 777. Are there any plans to update legendary quality profession tools? Right now they are statistically inferior to the level 80 plus 1 crafted tools that are not Masterworks.
So the old legendary stuff from before we overhauled professions, we didn't want to take them away from people because people had worked hard on it, but we did want to phase them out. And so that's why we've been progressing new tools beyond that. So for the old stuff that's been around a long time, we probably won't bump that back up. We'll probably go for continuing newer, higher end stuff to give bonuses instead of, going back to what's already been there.
All right. I do have a question from Flounder, but it is in regards to PvP. It is progression though, so I'm not sure. Do you guys want to answer that, or do you want to leave it for the PvP? All right. So rewards for PvP are currently not inviting for new players to test out or continue to play PvP. Will PvP rewards be adjusted with everything else, or should that be saved for the PvP CDP?
So first of all, I don't think in the word inviting in relation to our current CDP, in our current PvP, in any way makes any sense to a new player. I know that Flounder knows that, so I'm not being facetious.
Yeah. So I think there's a challenge there. One is we don't want rewards from PvP to be the best in slot for PvE, because there's a lot of people who just don't enjoy PvP, and the moment you do that, you're forcing them in there because they just need those rewards or they want those rewards. And that actually makes PvP experience worse for everybody. We would certainly be open to hearing what rewards people would like to see from PvP that are more PvP focused, because we do want the system to be rewarding for everyone who likes PvP. We just want to not force everyone to think they have to go PvP. But we are wide open to hearing what people think would be good there.
I think we've got to with PvP as well. We've got to break it down. We've got to reduce it and refine it and streamline it so it is accessible. So it does basically fire on all cylinders in terms of the core experience, loops, progression, again, discoverability. So I think there's work to be done before we kind of focus on that. That said, we are doing a PvP CDP.
It's going to start next week, and all those talk about our subtopics that I do.
Cool. All right, great.
All right, Sharp.
Just breathing into the microphone.
It's part of us. Sort of falling asleep here.
No, I was actually just scrolling for the question. Will there be more gear that you lose the ability to get? For example, in the since the seal rework in Module 18, you cannot purchase the Spy Guild armor that is available in the Yawning Portal because the seals are no longer.
I think there will be statistical gear that phases out over time and is no longer available, or sometimes limited time stuff like events, where if you participate in events, then you can get it. We have talked about options for that. For example, for the event stuff, maybe making it purchasable or doing some kind of rerun of the events later on. And for statistical items, we'd probably start making the transmute versions of them available, but I would expect to start seeing different gear just not be accessible or stuff, more so when it's no longer useful to the players than anything else.
Sharp, I doubt that you would consider this as gear. That in episodes, there is going to be the concept of cosmetic and personalization items in there. Of reminders of the experience, of the overall narrative arc and experience that may appear and never come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Mia, do you think you'll be able to find Dr. Jack Bruin's question? Seems to have been skipped over.
Oh yeah, here. The random queues are currently the only real good place to earn diamonds. However, a lot of the content, such as Svartborg, requires currency in very old content areas to purchase keys to even get a reward for doing them. Any plan to add a free-to-open box to areas such as these, or eliminating campaign keys altogether? No offense, but fishing in Sea of Moving Ice is boring and it's required to obtain one of the keys.
Boring is a very diplomatic word there. But well done.
Yeah.
I was just going to say we added more keys to fishing, but I guess can't say that. I think it's... So the problem is over time they've approached rewards for skirmishes and trials a bit different. So sometimes there's a scoreboard reward that you get at the end that would be considered the free chest, and sometimes there is a free chest in place of that. Sometimes I think I forget if we still have it, might be both. Ideally, all of our queued stuff would give you some amount of free rewards, whether that's from a scoreboard reward or chest, and then there would potentially be the extra chests with a campaign key. So certainly willing to look into that for Svartborg. I know Svartborg is also interesting in that it has the 3 different chests and all that stuff. So it is set up a bit out of standard from our normal dungeons and trials. So there's probably some work we could do there.
Yes, yachts. We're working on that right now. No, why not? But yeah, Dead Runner knows the joke about yachts as well. Maybe it's not even a joke. But yes, yachts, kind of like player housing with yachts.
Yeah, amazing. All right, Natsu.
I think this question was already kind of answered in the CDP, but someone asked, is there any chance to reduce the time spent on the campaign if we are going to the same campaign after the completion of that campaign on one of the characters without waiting another 2 modules to craft token and reduce it by 50%?
So, sounds like the question is more, can patronage tokens become there sooner? It's certainly an interesting question. I could see without a lot of difficulty moving that up to only 1 module removed versus 2. Whether we do on the same one, I think, is a bigger conversation that I wouldn't feel comfortable making a call on here without talking to the team. But yeah, certainly a possibility that we could make the patronage tokens available right away, but could certainly never guarantee that. It'd be a conversation.
Awesome. How much time do we still have, question-wise? Are you guys good to go, or...?
I don't know. Is there a certain... Do you want to get off of here, or...?
No, we don't have a time limit.
Don't have a deadline. It's basically your schedule.
I don't even know my
we
schedule. People might be looking for me.
I've got to leave at 2. I've got until 2:30.
All right.
All right. How long is that?
About 15 to 18 minutes or so.
Okay, because we got tons of questions still. Rainer.
Yeah, I don't have a personal question anymore, so I'm just gonna use another question from chat. One from Skull Elf that we also skipped. You mentioned that you are trying to aim for bound to account system. Don't you think it will only allow endgame players to move stuff around between toons to get more rewards and more currency by farming endgame content on a large amount of toons, and that will end up breaking the market?
Well, I think the part missed on that is if everything switched over to a bound to account system, there is no farming extra currencies on the other toons because you'll hit the account cap on those. And any currency that isn't bound to account and doesn't have a cap limit, like the universal currencies and campaigns that you use in the stores and stuff, then there's no real advantage to go into another character because you're already farming it on your main. So anything that has a cap would be a count-wide cap, and anything that doesn't have a cap means you could just keep farming it on that same character. So no, I'm not too concerned with people finding some kind of character abuse there.
Interesting. One from Viral NW. Any chance when the new reward changes come through, can we get more rewards specific to classes and roles? Like more healing gear for healings, more threat or mitigation for tanks, as currently all bonuses game-wide seem very specific for DPS.
Certainly yes. I think a lot of the reason so much of it is focused on DPS is in the past that's what the players have focused on, even a lot of times when they've been tanks and healers. So over time, we've just switched more rewards to focus on that because that's what players kept saying they wanted. I think it's certainly possible that we can do more about healing and more about threat gain or even threat reduction for DPSs to help the tanks out. So sure, it's just we got to find stuff that players actually want to equip and is still balanced.
Again, that's in yesterday's CDP proposal. That's a line item that we've agreed on and moving forward with.
Yeah. Yeah, Mia. Oh, sorry, Sharp. It's completely skipped Sharp. Sharp,
Okay.
do you have a personal question?
I'll ask another personal question. Okay. Do you think the game is ever going to reach a stage where it's going to be possible to add procedurally generated content into the game as opposed to content that is fixed design?
It's not a case of is it ever going to reach a stage. It's a case of is that something we want to do? Is it something that's going to, if we were going to use procedural generated content, we would still want it to provide elements of a bespoke experience where we expect a certain amount of emotional resonance from the player at certain points. So, Persona 4 does quite a good job of that. I think that we will move. I totally like the idea. At some point, we'll have an infinite dungeon or a procedurally generated, semi-procedurally generated experience for the player, but it's not anything we have on our backlog for this year.
I would probably become a little designer nerdy on that and say, depends on if you're talking about just randomized or actually truly procedurally generated. Truly procedurally generated would certainly be a lot further out. We'd have to build all that. To create a dungeon that had portions of it that could be randomized, the first dip of the toe into that was with expeditions and being able to have it randomly put different pieces together. So there's certainly chances to expand that to give more randomization or more pieces or do that for a regular dungeon. So I think depending on what you're viewing there, one is more possible than the other.
I mean, even with procedurally generated content, properly procedurally generated, if we really wanted to move towards that and maybe that talk about or have that experience of the game, it's something that would go into the backlog and we'd be working on it from a tech point of view. A lot of the members of the team have already explored, I would assume, I certainly have, different ideas around what that could mean and what the player experience would be on a variety of different games that we've worked on. The issue that I don't want us to fall into is predictable and mundane. And whilst the expeditions, it's funny because I mentioned this the other week on a stream and text. I think someone was asking, procedurally generated, and I said, well, actually, we already have foundational code and systems for that. It's expeditions. The responses were, no, it's a completely different thing, which it isn't. And secondarily, oh no, don't do any more expeditions. So, but the point that Jared's making is, we can, for example, take existing content, a little bit like the fractals in Guild Wars 2, and stitch them together and randomize them would be an interesting approach. There's multiple ways we could do it.
Okay, I'm just can I just comment on that a little bit, and then then we can move on to the next person. I just wanted to say that you're saying that it's predictable and mundane, which can be a problem, but you have the same problem with content that has been handcrafted as well, where after you've done it the first time, if you're doing it again, you've seen it already.
Yeah, but there's a difference between predictable and mundane on pretty much your first. predictable and mundane after 10 runs, right? I know that that's kind of me being a little bit unfair with that. I guess what I'm saying is, in the cases where we're overly predictable in terms of expectations and not exceeding expectations in some of the content we deliver, it's also our goal to ensure that we are meeting and exceeding experiential basically we're achieving
Yeah, I understand.
an increase in the experiential content. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Mia.
Espinson asked, regarding turning old weapons into transmutes, if that were to happen, would their collection tab change to reflect this, as in not having the refined versions of them in the collection tab?
So collections comes up quite a bit from players asking if they can reclaim stuff or reclaim, just the visuals. Maybe. Overall, collections behind the scenes is truthfully a fairly bad system. It wasn't set up in a way that expands easily. It's kind of getting cumbersome. So we're also routinely talking about if there's a new way we can approach that whole system, which that by itself might change a whole bunch of stuff and what people could claim, but certainly possible. It's come up a number of times on if people could at least reclaim the visuals, if not the actual stat item. So I guess the answer is maybe.
Okay. Natsu?
Will we ever get an option that will allow us to stop XP gain until we have completed a certain area, so players basically don't over-level the zone they are in?
We're definitely looking at ways to solve the over-leveling problem in M20. I don't want to go too much into it yet, but yes, that is a thing we are aware of. That's one of the problems with our leveling now, is especially if people use XP boosts or other stuff, they just completely out-level whole entire zones. So we're looking for options there for M20 to specifically make sure people can follow the flow.
Okay, Reiner, back to you.
Interesting. Not a chat. Well, I was thinking, so does that mean also, this is not a, no, I'm gonna stick to the format, sorry.
Why? We're in uncharted territory. The hour.
Well, the format was taking
we're
questions
not
from
in the
players.
format anymore because we. What
You're a
what
stickler
else
for.
quick. So does that also mean that lower level?
Let's go wild.
Let's go wild.
Sorry, go ahead.
Does that also mean that lower level players will not get double XP bonuses anymore from the events, or are we going to remove them?
So, yeah, this is the trickiness of that thing. So whatever we did wouldn't penalize players in any way. So the main focus is just to make sure that players can follow the storyline and the narrative in order without it becoming too easy, or without jumping so far ahead to something else that becomes too hard, and to solve those types of problems. I think as we get closer, we'll start being able to talk about some of that stuff, and I think that will help make it clearer. But it's an area that's a little tricky to get into right now, but it wouldn't be penalizing players in any way.
Okay. Should I also take a chat question then?
Yeah, go for it.
From Hexagon regarding progression. Oh, this is multiple questions. I'm just gonna take the first one because that's not fair. Will we ever get a switch / insignia / token that will allow us to stop XP gain? And oh wait. Yeah. Let's do question number 2. Will the campaign's areas will be aligned to stories such that Underdark comes before Maze Engine and is followed immediately by non-epic master Demogorgon? This also applies to Tiamat. So that you have to do things in order, I guess that's the question.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever hard enforce that order as much as probably make it clear to players if they want to follow the story as it unfolded, show them the order to do that. Because again, there's a lot of players who would like to jump into the newer content now and then go back and learn the older stuff once they've, kept up with the new stuff like everyone else. So I don't think we'd want to block them from doing that.
Because also, as we're doing the episodes and the narrative flow around there, and we're marketing around it, and we're engaging people with it, we want to make sure that everyone can be part of that too. So that's something that we need to discuss and talk about.
All right, next question. I really like this question from Angly at Next, asking, are there any plans with the progression module that gives players the options as far as endgame build instead of the illusion of choice we've had as far as effectiveness of every class build? And I think expanding upon that, obviously, with regards to gear, wearing things like the Ebony set for, DPS gain and certain other sets is not really a choice. If you want to be a top, build, you'll be wearing one singular item.
So I think it's kind of two parts there because it's the gear in the classes. We're working on the powers in the classes. A lot of people have said the balance has gotten better. Now that the balance has gotten better and we'll continue to push even better than that, we can solve some of the powers that players don't really use into better powers, which give players more choice directly on that front. For the gear, we are looking at ways to allow players more choice with the gear. Even that said, I think there will always probably be min-maxers, like Sharp Edge here, who will go through, crunch all the numbers and say, even if this one's 0.5% better, that's the best. And so that's the combo people use. But we definitely want to get it to where, for the people who don't care about the very min-maxing, that there's a wider option of things that they can use and use effectively in content.
Did you mention horizontal as well? Items.
Yeah.
You did. I missed
horizontal
that.
items, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Right.
You cut out, even though I'm right next to you, I can't hear you. Yeah.
So when you say, 0.5% more, for example, the Ebony hide and all that, the range is up to 10-15% more. Will you be bringing that closer together in terms of variety of builds?
Yeah, we've been doing that slowly over time. We definitely sometimes, release stuff that is too powerful, and we don't always want to pull that away immediately, even after we've, seen the mistake and seen the stuff, because people want to have some fun with it. So you look at Demogorgon, that was, especially post M16, was the de facto for as long. We were aware of that, but we had enough other stuff going on that we didn't want to take that away from people, so we gave more time before adjusting that. But we'll continue to start bringing stuff closer together and getting that.
And by the way, on that note, the plan is not to nerf. So it's raising rather than taking away.
I will counter that directly in this conversation a bit, saying that's not always possible. If one item's out of stats and everything else... I know. I'm saying there are times...
This is a case of raining Chris.
Because, I think that's worth talking about, because it comes up a lot. Why don't you always buff everything instead of nerf? And there are times where that's possible. But, for example, when there's a time let's look at recent class balance. People why bring down some of Arcanist powers will bring everyone else's up, because if we brought everyone up to Arcanist, then we'd also have to bring up all the creatures to that new level that everyone's at. So we've really done a ton of work to nerf people indirectly. And so it just makes more sense sometimes for those to pull it off. But in general, yes, we want to nerf areas that... sorry, I meant buff. I'm going to get myself in trouble if I say the wrong thing.
It's okay.
We want to buff things that are underperforming whenever possible to bring them up as a option as opposed to nerf something. There just will be occasional times where...
And another part of it, it's not just me saying, there's certain kind of direction that I ask the team to stay within and work within. Nerf isn't just about someone on the team just suddenly decides they want to nerf something. It's also to do with release quality, the amount of time the team has to basically look at the balance, the amount of time the team has in terms of bugs and so on. And so, our intent to nerf less is also predicated on all the work we're doing now to increase overall release quality and user experience. Are you upset with that one? Is that okay?
Okay. Somebody has to do marketing. That's fine.
Yeah.
This is great. No nerfs. Love it. The Sharp Edge.
Okay. I've got another user question here from Pulp TR. Regarding rewards, can we expect to see legendary equipment sets anytime soon that may be obtained from various sources? As a veteran player, they would find it interesting to have the chance to work further to get a better version of their current equipment other than getting stuck with Epic.
Do they mean mythical?
Legendary.
Right. Yeah.
Are they saying specifically ones with set bonuses, or they just want all their items to be legendary?
I think they just want the items.
I mean, sure, we can turn anything orange. But
orange is pretty.
I do, I'm joking some, but I do know that there's players that like to look at their character screen and see it all the same level and tier. And yeah, I mean, I think we could definitely design a system to get to that point so that people can have that uniformity.
All right, that was a nice, quick, easy one. Mia.
I'm going to butcher that name, so I'm just going to say Tobre asked, could legendary tools get an upgrade, something similar to Insignia upgrade system?
Again, probably not the old tools, because as we switched over the production system, we wanted to phase out those particular tools. That said, could we introduce new types of tools that have an upgrade path of some kind? Probably. I think this person's probably more saying the tools they already have, but in that case, probably not.
But what they're really saying is they want to take up more of our bag space because they want to have lots of tools sitting in your...
Yep. Inventory pressure equals revenue. That's a joke. So no more slogans of no nerfs and inventory pressure. Yeah, inventory. I don't know how you say it in America.
Yes, can we get more bags, please? I need more bags. I'm running out. That's true.
I'm gonna sneak in a personal question. A lot of long-term progression is tied to enchantments, insignias, legendary mounts. Those all take a lot of time to get if you start out. While on the other hand, armors especially are very easy to get in the most cases. Do you see any problem with how there's like some parts that take forever to get and the armors are basically exchangeable each mod and they are like gotten in just a few hours of gameplay?
I think we always need short and long-term gains, and I think it's important to have short-term gains be a good portion of the base stat so that players can get up to good points before tackling the long-term gains. The timing, how long it takes for either one may not be exactly right, but we definitely wouldn't want everything in the game to progress at the same rate, because it's good to have those, I can knock this out of the park, this week, and then over the next month I can do this, and then on long-term I can try to get multiple legendary mounts, that kind of stuff. So we definitely want different rates of
short, medium, and long-term, basically, progression and goals. I mean, we could certainly tidy up, I think, some of the compulsion loops so that they better intersect with one another.
Yeah.
But yeah, short, medium, and long-term goals are absolutely required in terms of, giving a player a rewarding progression experience.
We probably, based on the time, probably have time for one last question.
All right, Rhino, well, you're going to be making a deciding question.
Deciding question? Well, I don't have the personal one anymore, so I'm going to a question from Dr. Jack Rune X regarding rewards for effort in a queue. Not wanting to name or shame anyone, so I won't, okay. However, there seems to be some players that go into trial queues and simply sit by the fire and don't participate. Can you put a program in that would auto-boot and replace individuals that do not contribute to the completion of the content? It's very frustrating to run into players like that.
So, yeah, we've actually talked about this before on the software side of stuff. It's a bit trickier to do it without false positives. You do occasionally see it in Demogorgon. I think what you see is on a trial that is a bit easier and doesn't need everyone to participate. And truthfully, probably people aren't going to like to hear this. Demogorgon's a bit too easy for the trial queue right now. Then you can take on that dead weight to finish, and I think that encourages people to start being that leech to get it. And it's obviously not good for anybody. I don't know if we'll be able to get an automatic solution to it. We can always adjust some of our kick timers and that kind of stuff. We can also adjust how some of the queues and stuff work to how people get credit. It's unfortunately just not the easiest problem to solve. I wish it was. Yeah.
Right. I see Chris has left us. We didn't get to say thank you, but thank you to Chris for being here.
he says thank you, and when he was leaving the room, he said,
Yeah,
so
thanks to Chris.
Huge thank you for Chris.
All right, so I think that's the time.
Yeah, I think that, we're going to wrap up because you've got meetings probably.
Probably.
Need you or something.
I may have missed one already. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody who watched. Yeah.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
backstream win. So I don't know what we can do right now. Should we continue with the after talk about what we just answered? Or
Yeah, it sounds good. Do like a follow up. What do the people think? What do you guys think in chat with regards to the questions and answers?
Raina, you've already had your question, Raina. You're asking a question from chat now. You've already had your turn. It's dead, man.
Okay, next. That Manu. I'm being moderated.
Oh man.
Okay.
Who's gonna answer my question? The issue I have is I don't have enough bags. You know, I ran out of bags. I have like 6 or 7 of them maxed out. When do we get more bag space? That's the real question.
Okay, now people can spam.
I mean, you could also sort your bags.
I mean, I could, but all the stuff that I could keep.
We have a huge Natsune in the middle. It's an interesting distribution. But as for the format, I think this worked very well. We had like 30 questions or 35 questions. Actually, 37.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it works.
I think this was.
I'm surprised. I expected more, and the bot held up. I was surprised. I was expecting it to break down. That's why I was getting nervous. Some people were like, "Well," because I kept constantly checking. I was like, but there weren't as many questions as I thought there would be, which is interesting.
The bot was really helpful.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah, and massive shakes.
And Skull was helpful.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, without him marking all those messages, thank you so much, Scully. Like, wow, a lot of, like, almost 70% of the questions were off topic.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, that's
guys.
It's to be expected, indeed. I think that's always in streams like this. That also when they have their streams for themselves, a lot of questions will just be about bugs and certain topics that they don't want to touch upon at that point.
Maybe I missed it, but I'm kind of disappointed I didn't see anyone asking about the alpha compy.
Which question? About it not working correctly still, or?
About when it is in the Send store or whatever. That seemed to be a kind of reoccurring question in the last streams.
It just was.
No, the person that always asks that question is Zarella, and he's got one now, so he stopped spamming that question.
Very selfish question. So I think the general idea from chat, I think they also really appreciated this system. I think it's really nice because you can also handle the questions in order, so that's very fair. The cooldown is very good, and so everyone gets a chance. So again, I already said that at the start, but that Manu, thank you so much for making this bot. Super helpful.
Yeah, of course. And thanks to everyone. Mia, Sharp, Natsu. It's great having be a part of this with you guys.
Yeah, thanks guys. And and lady, of course. I would say guys.
Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thank you.
So, what's next, moderator?
Right. I guess the follow-up, because you wanted to do a follow-up on that. Like, how did you think that went in terms of the answers we received? Because it feels very transparent. A lot of it is more, let's see what happens, like, down the line. Especially with the answers that the CDP is going to bring on the close now. Chris said he's working on posting that, right?
He did, actually. He did post the answer. I have it actually in here, so we can show that. Bam. Here it comes. Sliding in. So here's basically the answer of the CDP. I cannot read it myself now, but these are the items that they picked from all of the ideas and that they're going to work on. That's how I understood it. So it's a big list, but there were a lot of ideas. But yeah, it would have been nice if we had this a little bit earlier, but yeah, we were expecting some overlap with this.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But for the people who want to see this, I also have a command !forum. This is the link to this where you can find this text, so we don't have to overlay this onto the screen. So we can still see Natsu here. It's a big picture.
Hey, Natsu.
I think my profile picture is kind of blurred anyway, so no problem.
Mike. If I talk like this, is it better?
Wow.
that hurts my ears.
Wow.
It's either too loud or too soft. I don't know. I have a weird mic. I need to get a new one, I guess.
Oh my. What did the rest of you think? Sharp, Mia.
With regards to the answering of the questions, I agree it was very transparent, especially there were some questions you could tell they were giving an honest answer, and they were an easy example is the question that I asked about Infernal Citadel, where they were clearly not prepared for that question, and the answer they gave is what they feel, and I wasn't actually prepared to be asked what I thought about their response to it. And I feel that I responded rather poorly to what they asked, to be fair.
Sure. Put you on the spot.
Yeah, I felt that I responded rather poorly to that. But I also feel that that particular response wasn't particularly good, though, because what they mentioned in response to it were things that weren't related to Infernal Citadel itself. For example, the gear that got rapidly changed wasn't the gear that was in the Infernal Citadel, as far as I'm aware. It was the gear from the hunts. So things like that.
Yeah, I think that he was mixing up the dungeon with the campaign, with the zone itself.
They tried
that's,
to answer.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, you go first.
Yeah. But they mixed stuff up, but it's understandable, and it was a very honest. That's what they were thinking. It's and in cases like that, people make mistakes. So.
Right.
Yes, I think they try to answer them as honestly as they can. It obviously would have been great if there would have been a little bit more details or like more specific things that they've given us as answers, but I don't think we can really expect that at this early stage. They're just picking up their ideas from the CDP. So that was really surprising.
What was strange was when they said it wouldn't matter to you, Sharp, because you're right at the end, end game. Someone who's not end game, for example, someone like me who's more mid game, having run Citadel for over 24 hours plus, I still didn't get any gear that I could use that would actually be good. Besides the helm that you can use and the gloves, anything else is you're still running old mod, 17 gear. So
you see, what I didn't have enough time to really say, and what I was thinking is that when I look at a piece of content, I try to see it from multiple perspectives. And look, everyone's bad at trying to see things from different perspectives from their own. But the way I try to see it is, why would I run this if I was a new player? So let's say I was starting a fresh character now. How would I want to go about gearing my character up? And there is a really good example in Module 18 of something you would actually want to do, and that's Juma and the Juma bags. You would want to spend, all day farming Juma, and you can just farm Juma every day for a month, and you could probably get best in slot, just from farming Juma and capping your AD. You could probably...
You don't want them to nerf them. Jeez.
Not here anymore, so we're good to go.
If I was genuinely, if I was starting over, if I was to make a new character today and I was going to do a how to get to best in slot guide, my guide would be you level to 80, you unlock Juma, and you run Juma every single day, and you do as much Juma as you possibly can, and you cap your 80, and within about a month's time, you're probably going to be best in slot. I honestly think the rewards from Juma need to be nerfed.
Yeah, I mean, please, no. I mean, you get things like purple belays, you get mounts, you get epic mounts. You literally can get anything from there. So
yeah, it's not just that. You can also get preservation wards, coalescent wards.
Yeah.
You can...
Whatever they have in there needs to be in dungeons. That is dungeon rewards.
To be fair, the Citadel also, if you run it and open both chests, you can buy 2 Juma bags. So additionally, to the loot from the dungeon. So
Yeah, that is true.
It is a
But
bit
still,
slower
it
than
is-
grinding siege event, of course, but
still, I agree that the rewards from the dungeon are kinda. meh.
Yeah, it is discouraging running for maybe 40 minutes, maybe that being an average, and getting Red Feather Clan in the chest, and that's it.
But
But they're aware of that with the...
maybe Juma is not meant for people who want to have the best gear and just want to have fun. Could be right.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, true. It is a fun dungeon, and it's quite challenging.
Oh, it's fun. It really is. It's just a shame that the rewards aren't really up to par. You could get lucky and get something really good, but
You
it
can
is
always get
RNG.
a pound or something, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my 2 cents, whenever you guys are done, I see Reek is online, and he seems to be in prime time if we end up passing on.
Yeah, we can rate him with like 150 people. That's a good idea.
Make their day.
Everyone, yeah. So, any more questions or remarks from you guys?
Is there anything
are
else you
not
want to
you.
go? Is there maybe something else you want to go over about the stream? I don't know.
I also don't know. I think
Mia, you've been quiet. Mia and Natsu. What do you guys have to say?
I mean, I feel about the same as you guys. I mean, there was a lot of transparency, but there were certain questions that, yeah, I felt they couldn't really answer. They really didn't really understand us. But yeah, all in all, it was good.
It's definitely a step up from the previous forms of communication.
Yeah,
With the
absolutely.
communication we had before Chris took over.
Oh yes, of course.
great. Yeah. But that's the same every time, I think. So it's a good change, and I think it has affected the others as well. So everyone there is more open. Ever since Cristian came in.
I know I'm probably in the minority here saying this, and I'm going to get shot for saying this, but I've always believed that they do read what we say, okay? What I haven't been certain about is that they understand what we say as we are saying it. So they might read it and translate it into some different language and then interpret it completely differently to what we're actually saying. But I do feel that they do read what we're saying. It's just that how they implement it is a bit, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what we
business
always
logic.
have, right? The wrong interpretations, understanding people wrong. That's normal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I've always felt that they do read it, which is why I take time to write what I think, as opposed to just I don't bother writing something if I don't think somebody's listening.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Shall we leave it at this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rainer, for putting this together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for joining in, and thank you all for joining in as well, viewers, and the moderators as well, of course. Thanks again. Then we're going to leave it here. Don't leave. We're going to rate Ranger Reek. I want to check if my credits work, and then I'll see everyone next time. Goodbye, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
And of course it doesn't work. Hey, great. Okay, we just got rates. Come on.
Something would be wrong if everything was... Something